Dragon Ball Heroes is a name that you will hear a lot of in Japan, but you will rarely ever hear in the West. It's a very popular arcade game over in Japan that's been going for almost 10 years now. But for those almost 10 years, they've wanted to keep everything Heroes away from Western shores. The 3DS games never got localized, the arcade game never got localized, and even the promotional anime that's still running for the series has never even gotten a proper subtitle. It's a real shame too, because Heroes loves diving into what if and wacky scenarios, like giving people transformations they never had in the mainline series. Thankfully, that's changed. While we're not about to get new episodes of the Dragon Ball Heroes anime over in the West, we are getting our very first look at the arcade experience on Western shores. Here is my review of Super Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission for the Nintendo Switch. Every time a new type of media around Dragon Ball Heroes is made, the story changes up a little bit. This story is about Beat, someone who loves Dragon Ball and loves playing the card battle game Dragon Ball Heroes. When he starts his first match though, some strange anomalies happen where Dragon Ball characters are appearing in the real world and wreaking havoc. He's then recruited into a special task force so they can find out why these anomalies are happening and stop them to preserve their world. I would call this story very wacky, silly, and fun like Dragon Ball Heroes always has been. There's a lot of what-if stuff with all of the Dragon Ball characters, a lot of what-if transformations, and really just a lot of crazy stuff that you'd never see in mainline Dragon Ball. I wouldn't go and give it a gold medal for its story, but it's a lot of fun with all the fan service it does. The last things I'll say about story are the fact that this is a very different Heroes story. It shares a lot of characters with some of the manga for Dragon Ball Heroes, like Victory Mission and Universe Mission, but it's still separate. And finally, this is not a good game if you're new to Dragon Ball. This is made for fans of the series, and a lot of the characters are, in the story, fans of the actual series. The Dragon Ball story is not explained to you, and it's from the perspective of hardcore fans of the series, so if you don't know your Dragon Ball lore, the game's not going to explain it to you. When it comes to gameplay, just like the arcade counterpart in Japan, this is a card battle game. So instead of having direct control of characters like in other Dragon Ball games, you have a strategic card-based system where you throw a team of heroes out to fight another team of heroes. It's worth noting that this is basically a copy-paste replica of the actual arcade game. This isn't a watered-down version like the Hero Coliseum in Xenoverse 2. If you look at this side by side with the actual arcade game, there's not really much different at all. This is basically you getting the actual arcade experience on a Western console. And of course, this is a game filled with fan service. There are over 300 characters and over 1,000 cards to collect, containing everything from Dragon Ball to Z, GT, Super, Heroes, and all of the movies. And this is one of the major pulls for fans of the series because you can make wacky team combinations. You can set up your teams and watch Ultra Instinct Mastered Goku fighting alongside Super Saiyan 4 Dark Broly and Super Saiyan 3 Gogeta. But let's get out of the fan service and talk about how you actually play the game. You've got a bunch of game modes to go through, and when it comes to battles, your main ones are Story Mode, Arcade Mode, and Network Battle. The first two are more story focused. Story Mode lets you go through the actual campaign for World Mission where you're trying to fix the anomalies, and Arcade Mode lets you go through a bunch of different arcs based around some of the Dragon Ball Super movies, some of the previous Heroes arcs, and some new stuff. And of course, Network Battle is just as you'd expect, online battles against other players. Of course, there are a few other battle modes that you can go through, like the Tournament Mode and Custom Missions, where you can create and upload your own missions or go online and play other players' missions. Now, your main objectives in this game are going to be collecting and customizing cards and participating in battles. Cards can be earned through a gacha machine, which basically has you go through different sets of cards, and once you put a ticket in, you will get a random card from that set. This is kind of like pulling booster packs for a trading card game. On the downside, you don't know what you're going to get, but on the bright side, you're constantly getting new tickets with every battle that you participate in, and anytime you get a double, it's automatically converted into ticket pieces that you can exchange for new tickets. Do note that there are no microtransactions around this feature, and you get tickets so often that I can't even count a single battle I've lost where I still haven't gotten new tickets for the gacha machine. But even those with horrible luck still have options. There's a very extensive card creation tool here that you can put in your custom decks for story mode. So if you really want a Caulifla card and can't get them out of the RNG gacha machines, all you have to do is go into the creation shop, buy her artwork, and you can create your own Caulifla card, modifying and customizing everything from the stats to what kind of skills she uses in battle. There's really a ton of customization here, even just with modifying cards. But let's get out of the customization and talk about how battle works. In every battle, you pit your 7-character team against the enemy's 7-character team, and you move them along a little battlefield that has an attack area and a support area. The way this progresses is fairly simplistic. Your team has an HP gauge, and every card you have has an HP gauge known as a stamina gauge. Whenever someone attacks, damage is dealt both to the opponent's team HP gauge and the stamina gauges of the cards being attacked. When a team HP gauge reaches 0, that team loses, but when a stamina gauge reaches 0 for a card, they just get stunned, forcing them back to the support area for a turn or two so they can regenerate it before they can fight again. The big thing here is to strategically maintain your stamina without stunning any of your characters, because the more characters you have out, the higher your speed stat is, which determines who gets to attack first on that turn. And when you do attack, you and your opponent's team basically clash with one another, with you attacking them and them trying to defend themselves. This is done in a minigame where you both have a moving bar and you want to stop the bar as high as possible, and whoever has the higher score on that bar wins that clash. If you win as an attacker, you do more damage and have a chance to do a super flashy super attack. And if you're defending and you win, you prevent your opponent from using a super skill and take less damage. This is an incredibly important part of the game, especially once you get later on, and enemy super skills are extremely devastating to your health. Being able to time that minigame is just as important as the cards you put in your deck when you go into battle. This is surprisingly easy to get into, but it's one of those easy to learn, hard to master systems. Because every card has a lot of different active and passive skills that you can get into, there's a ton of different combinations and a lot of different strategies you can implement with different cards. There's really just a lot of different stuff you can do here. And that goes into content as well, because there's a lot of stuff to do here. Across the story mode, you should spend no less than 30 hours even without touching arcade mode or all of the side arcs that you can do after you clear the main story arcs. Now let's dive into presentation, which is probably the biggest nitpick that everyone has about this game. The graphics engine looks a little bit dated, kind of like the old PS2 and PS3 Budokai engines, and that's because that's the kind of graphics engine Dragon Ball Heroes has been using for almost 10 years now. But be that as it may, it does have a lot of blemishes. Many of the character models have a lot of jagged edges during certain animations. Docked mode does help with this a little bit, but not completely. In terms of performance, I have no complaints. The game's never crashed on me and I've never seen any frame drops. Now let's get into battery life, which I wasn't sure what to expect. But World Mission has a battery range of 2 hours and 46 minutes on high settings, up to 3 hours and 50 minutes on low settings. Definitely a little more than I was expecting. Now in conclusion, World Mission brings Dragon Ball Heroes to the West for the very first time in an almost exact replica of the arcade experience. Now, the downside, the graphics are a bit dated, and those not caught up with Dragon Ball lore will definitely be confused with a lot of stuff here, but for those that are, we'll find a game with a ton of content and an overwhelming amount of fan service and character combinations. Reviews to Go rates Super Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission for the Nintendo Switch a 9 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below or head to the website at reviewstogo.com.